So I want to bring in Sanjay Hegde now. Sanjay Hegde, I think the point both Mohan and Dr. Qureshi have made is that the Supreme Court's earlier judgment never asked for this matching. In fact, the cynics even then said that you'll get a list of those who purchased bonds, you'll get a list of those who received bonds, there'll be a whole bunch of IDs, and then it's left either Bhagwan Barose or a deep investigation to match those numbers. So today, when you see this exchange, and as one of the senior lawyers in the case, what is the import of what has happened in the Supreme Court today, Sanjay?
No, as a man of law, I was quite, a bit afraid about the Supreme Court. Often, the judgments were being taken for granted. It was as if the judgments were written in water. I do remember that during COVID, Chief Justice Bobde said that Lord Jagannath will not forgive us if we do not carry out the Rath Yatra, if we allow the Rath Yatra. 2-3 days later, it changed on an application. The government has sort of got used to the fact that if there is an inconvenient judgment, it can be slow walked, it can be set at naught. This is not a government which rushes to comply or exists in a culture of compliance with what is stated by the courts or what is required of it by the courts. So a recent example was the Enforcement Directorate director. He got extension after extension, and then when the Supreme Court said no more, the government again came back for some time, and it did get some time. So they came up again with what they thought was a plausible story. But this time, the Supreme Court said, enough is enough. You had time. Our directions were very clear. Our directions was, first tell us who bought. You have your KYC. You were required under the terms of our earlier interim order to keep all the data together, collate it. Hand it over to the Election Commission. We also hand over to the Election Commission as to who encashed those bonds when, where, as to what other inferences can be drawn. That is left to the public at large. That is a subsequent stage.
But Sanjay, you mentioned the government. Do you think the government is answerable for what's happened, or the state bank? Mohandas Pai says you can't use the two as interchangeable. What do you say?
To think that the state bank in such a matter would have taken a decision on its own is to believe in fairy tales. That's about it. We've had questions of how the state bank gave loans to particular business houses, how the state bank chairman went with the government when a particular deal was being negotiated in Australia. We have seen the proximity of the nationalized banks with the government of the day. And I do not think that a mere chairman of a nationalized bank would have done this without recourse or without prompting from the finance ministry.
Okay, so at this note, I want to actually play out what Subhash Garg, and his comments become very important because he was a defender of the bonds. He was the officer when the bonds were implemented. And not just did he say that the SBI needs 10 minutes, he told me that according to him, the SBI officials would be extremely uncomfortable at having had to go to court with the position they've taken. So Mohan, I know you think that they shouldn't be interchanged, but this is what Subhash Garg said. Take a look.
SBI's probable tactic, as I said, is to delay as much as by using the procedural spaces in the court process. The question which you asked me about SBI, I guess this, I can only guess, the SBI bosses must be quite uncomfortable in the situation which is developing.
Sandeep Ghosh, let me take that to you then. Mohan doesn't agree. This is Subhash Garg. No critic of the government. The man in charge in the hot seat when the bonds were implemented. A fan of the bonds, like Mohandas Pai believes it's the least evil, as he called it, option of funding politics. But he says the SBI should not have been put in this position. This is a government decision. Mohandas Pai disagrees. Sanjay Hegde says it's a fairy tale to believe otherwise. My question is political. Why the elections are 6 weeks away? Why? How does it matter to the government if this information comes out in the data form, which is going to take months, weeks for people to collate? How does it impact the electoral result in any way? Sandeep.
Barkha, first of all, I think I'm hearing a lot of conjectures, innuendos, theories, but there can be various opinions, but the facts we have to see. First of all, I think today's judgment is a damn squib. It's making really a mountain out of a molehill because nothing substantial is being achieved. What we heard was being said by the state bank chairman is they are essentially the fall guy. In Bengali, we have a saying that, DK mere boke shekano, you hit the daughter to teach a lesson to the spouse. So it is a bit of that because there is. Now, if what is being said today, what the Supreme Court finally said, that we only wanted the list of donors from State Bank of India, I think that is a very, very, a non-issue. Because you may not have got details of individually, there are thousands of bonds, somebody has paid 1 crore or 50 lakhs, you may not have had that. You already had in public domain some of the large donations who are there, because each of these companies who have bought the bonds had to declare it in their returns. And they have not declared whom they have given. If somebody had bought 250 crores of bonds or even 25 or 2 crores of bonds, all the companies would have had to declare, and that information is in public domain. What is in public domain, like you just now played up, how much each political party has received. And it is not as if the insinuations which were being made that BJP has got all the money. That is not true. BJP would have got a lion's share. It's a ruling party not only in the center, but in various states. So that is not at all surprising that they would have got a lion's share. But if DMK got 254 crores, being a state party, it is no mean sum. If a party like TMC, I forget the figures, what was declared 150 odd crores, Congress itself has got some 300, 400 crores. I don't recall the numbers.
952 crores between 2017 and the TMC's got nearly 800 crores. The numbers on the screen.
Those are none of them are small numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
The embarrassment which we are talking about, if the linking was done between, I'll come to the linking question separately, if assuming the linking was done, and that is what was intended to be done. And I think that was the wish list of people who had petitioned and who were expecting to think that linkage will come out. And then we will say Mr. A has given money to Mr. B. Mr. A has got these favors, and therefore this is the nexus. That nexus is not going to be established in the current form. And it cannot, if somebody again does what I was hearing, that they do their 2 + 2 = 5, how will the public or any intelligence, whether it's media or anybody, do, unless it's conjecture? If that is not there, if there is only a list of people who are donors, and here is a list of people who received it, and then you try to assume that, okay, BJP has received X amount, that must have come from Mr. A, and because Mr. A or A2, and it has gone to them, and somewhere else, that is absolutely in the realm of conjecture. That is not going to solve the problem. Now, there may have been an attempt to delay. The only reason, granting without admitting or without knowing the facts, if they were the only reason State Bank or the government, assuming that they prompted the State Bank, would have been to delay, was if they assumed that there was this, the order meant linking the two things. That would have caused a problem for everybody. And, not the least for the people, other parties who have been crying horse, other than CPIM, who said we have not received any bond. You think the people who got 950 crores, if tomorrow the names were revealed from whom they had got, it will not cause embarrassment either to them.
It's a good question.
So that was, if there was a non-issue, was because of that. So therefore, whatever you may say, how it was perceived or how it is being made out, I think, the Supreme Court to some extent had to therefore bring out the angst in firing the State Bank, this thing. But if this is all that you are wanting, that Mr. Garg is also absolutely right. It can be given in 2 minutes or 10 seconds. That is not the issue. The problem will be, and the problem which Mr. Salve explained, that nobody is willing to listen. How I know of people who bought bonds. When you buy the bond, there is no serial number mentioned there. When you deposit the bond, there is no serial number. Then, as you said, serial numbers are put and they're scrambled. And that's how the other side, because there was nobody wanted officially. People could have unofficially known who was given money to whom. That's a different story.
Okay.
But technically, nobody could have got that.
I think you make a good point that what does it all amount to? And so
And the last point, with due respect to Dr. Qureshi, Election Commission has got some ridiculous limits of 75 lakhs, etc. for a Lok Sabha election. Don't we all know how much is spent even in a panchayat election? Your guest who you had on television 2 days ago on your other show, podcast, Rashid Kidwai, has gone on record to write how Mr. Motilal Vora's job, he used to have an early dinner and then walk in 24 Ashoka Road campus to count the number of trucks and vehicles were coming in, carrying whatever. And people like Rashid, who had access to him, would actually get news by having those after dinner post-pandral walks with him. And while Mr. Motilal Vora quietly counted. This is how everybody has done collection.
Okay. You made a lot of points, and Dr. Qureshi and Sanjay Hegde and everybody else will respond. But Sumant has been waiting very patiently, and I think Sumant, you tend to agree with Sandeep today that it's a mountain out of a molehill. At the end of it, it's symbolic more than practical. It's not really going to clean up funding. It's more about the Supreme Court showing that it can stand up for a principle. Its value is symbolic, not real. That's the kind of point you made on Twitter. Go ahead.
Only one point I'll make before we go in. I think there is huge issue of estoppel and legality if the two things are linked. Right or wrong, the government and people had assured donors that it will remain anonymous. If you are now going by retrospective, it is going to be a huge blow to India's any kind of law.
Okay. That's something to think about. Sanjay will come in on that. Go ahead, Sumant. Yeah, Sumant.
Barkha, 2-3 quick points. First of all, this whole argument that it will take 3 months to collate it is bunkum. Everybody knows that. And I'm amazed that the Supreme Court actually swallowed that it will take 3 months and 4 months to match. Remember, there is a unique number, however scrambled it is later on, there is a unique number for each bond, which is not visible. The point is, these bonds are in tranches. It's not like you have to go and search 40,000 bonds to find a match for one bond. The bond would have to be encashed within 15 days by the political party. So you don't have to search 40,000 bonds for each and every match. So this whole argument that I'm amazed, honestly amazed, which is why I said that State Bank, my last recollection was State Bank had 250,000 employees, right? So it would not take more than at the most a week to match these 40,000. Everybody knows that. I mean, we are not even around. Everybody knows. And let's face it, I worked in IT. There needs to be a unique identifier if we are to link A with B. So there has to be a unique identifier somewhere. It's only a question of throwing enough people at the job to get the job done. And I'm sure that it could have been done. So let's forget this whole argument that it will take 4 months to collate 40,000 bond details. Now the point I'm trying to make is the issue of wanting to conceal these names, which the government seems to have initiated through SBI. I don't think it is simply because of the donors' names coming out in public domain or the list of two separate things. Now, what if these are unknown entities? What if the names turn out to be entities nobody has heard of? What if they are shell companies? What if they are proxies? What if they are fronts? In fact, that is a bigger concern, because that will open up a whole new can of worms. This will, I mean, the usual suspects are expected to have donated to their, to the usual parties, is not going to damage anybody. I think the public have already discounted that. Electorally, it's not going to even have a small impact. People already assume all this has happened. Now, my point is, what if these are unknown names? Nobody knows who these companies are and where the money has come from. So I think that will open up a much bigger can of worms. And my personal
hang on. I think Mohan is wanting to interject briefly on your point on shell companies. Mohan,
Barkha, it's ridiculous to say if there's a shell company, you can't trace it. Let us remember, if a shell company buys a bond, there'll be a debit in his bank account. There has to be a money transfer from somewhere. The money transfer has to come to the banking channel. The money transfer can come through equity or through revenues or something else. You can easily track it. I don't know why
Who
he's
has to
making
trace
this
it?
argument.
Who has to track
It can
it,
be
sir?
done. You can track it because
It
you
can
know
be
the name.
done.
Please,
I am
Suman,
not
keep
saying
quiet.
it can't be
Please.
done, sir. Let me
Suman,
finish.
keep quiet. Suman, keep
Sir,
quiet.
I did not interrupt you.
Please
I did
listen.
not interrupt
Acha,
you.
acha,
Sir,
1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute.
Keep quiet. Let me finish.
Acha,
Finish my point.
1 minute,
Let me
1
finish
minute,
my point.
1 minute, gentlemen, 1
No, no,
minute.
let me
Mohan,
finish my point.
Let me
Acha.
finish.
Okay,
Barkha, let
okay.
me finish. What he's
Okay,
saying
Mohan.
is shell company comes, you can't do it. There is shell company. The company has a name. It'll have at least 2 shareholders. There'll be a bank account. Money has to come in. You can trace the money. You can have a forensic. The money has to be in the bank. The bank will debit and give a bond. So it can be traced. Yes, shell companies are difficult, but it requires some effort to trace. The name of the
Okay.
company can be there.
Okay.
Now,
Barkha, can I make my point?
technical
Can
point.
I make my
Now,
point?
yes.
Yeah.
Now let's
Barkha,
Suman
my
respond.
point. My
Barkha, let me
point
finish.
is-
Barkha, let me finish.
Let him speak.
Let me finish. See, Hassabe made an important point. He said in the application, there is no number. The bond may have a number. The bond having a number and the application made, there is no correlation. That's the point he made. Then he said the number of a bond is scrambled. So you see, there is a technical issue which we don't have details to come to a judgment. The point I want to make is, if you think a State Bank of India after 250 years will take a chance that it can go to SB, go to the Supreme Court on the 6th of March and say we can't do it, the Supreme Court will accept it. The Supreme Court will accept it without verification. The Supreme Court will not make efforts to verify and they can get away. I think it's being foolish. It's cuckoo land. I don't think it's
Can I respond to that?
Okay. Please, let's
Barkha, let me
speak.
respond. You have to allow me to
Yeah.
respond. It's not fair.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
2 points. 2 points. If the Supreme Court had called for an expert committee to evaluate whether what State Bank was saying was factual and whether then decided that yes, what they were saying was correct, it's a different issue. It was decided between last week when they filed the application and now. My point is not that shell companies cannot be traced. My point is it adds to the embarrassment if it is known that certain political parties have been receiving funding from unknown entities. It can be traced, but who's to trace it? This is like, we will bring back all the money from the Swiss banks. The has been going on saying that, it started with saying that we will reveal who invested in Swiss banks, but now we can't reveal even who invested in State Bank.
I know that's the meme doing the rounds today. Okay, lot of things to discuss. Let's bring in Dr. Qureshi, then Sanjay Hegde, because a lot of points have been raised. Let me actually just get in here and mute Sumant for a moment. Yes, Dr. Qureshi, I want to ask you, while this debate is taking place, there is also a dramatic development in the Election Commission with the sudden resignation of Mr. Arun Goyal. Now, since we're talking about elections and transparency, we must actually take a look at this sudden exit. Again, a lot of conjectures, theories. His statement only says for personal reasons. There's a petition to the Supreme Court by a Congress leader also raising questions about how the rest of the election commission should be appointed before the elections are to take place. I just wanted your quick take on this alongside everything else that we are discussing. Also, a lot of points made about the EC's limits on public spending.
Yeah.
Qureshi
Two things. Let me deal with the easier one first. Public spending. I would like to correct. I think it was Mr. Sumit who mentioned the
Sandeep mentioned. Sandeep, yes.
Yeah, sorry, Sandeep ji. 70 crore lakh limit is not put by the election commission. It is put by the government through the law ministry. So let that be clear that the election commission is happy to make it rational. We have been asking in the political parties what is rational. They don't have as a unanimous opinion. Therefore, that's a different issue. The second, there's a sudden development in the election commission. Frankly, I would not like to speculate too much if he says he is living on personal ground, although it sounds very difficult because he had a secure 4 years tenure and he was going to be the CEC, the most important job he could aspire to have. Leaving that, but even if he has chosen to do that, now what? Well, the government will appoint 2 more within the next 1 week, no problem. Till the government appoints, suppose the government is not able to appoint in 2 weeks, it will take a month, Doesn't matter because there is a CEC. CAC has run the organization for 60 years, and this CEC has been around for 2-3 years. He is totally hands-on. He can easily handle this. And as I like to say, that actually the election of India is on autopilot. There are 12 million government servants doing it, brightest IAS officers, brightest IPS officers. Even if we just relax in our office and in the drawing room, the election will happen beautifully because it is on autopilot. All that we do, complaints will come out about the model code of conduct, where we have to sit in judgment like a court and give a judgment.